In today's video, we're going to explore the magic of Neocolor II water-soluble crayons. Whether you're a beginner or looking for some new techniques, in this video, I will be showing you how I use these versatile crayons to create stunning, colorful backgrounds for your artwork. So grab your Neocolors or any of your favorite water-soluble crayons and let's get started on creating some backgrounds. Hi guys, it's Shani here. Welcome to my channel and thank you for joining me today. So on today's video, I'm going to share with you how I use my Neocolor IIs for backgrounds. I have had so many requests about using Neocolor IIs in coloring books. A lot of people seem to be struggling to get good results with the Neocolor IIs, to get good blends and to avoid them being streaky. And so I thought I would finally come around and share with you a little bit about Neocolor IIs, what I have found. Obviously, like I've said before, I'm self-taught, so whatever works for me is what I'm going to be sharing with you guys, all right? I picked out this book here, Emily Liddell-Hall-Olberg's Fairy Tales and Folklore, an absolutely stunning book, and there's a page in here I really want to get started on. I've not colored in this book yet, and I thought I would do this page here. Now, the quality of this book is absolutely beautiful, but because I've not colored in it, I don't know how the Neocolor IIs are going to work, so it could be a flop, but we will see. It sounds like it should work, but yeah, we'll find out soon enough. So I'll do a Neocolor II background on this particular page here, and I'll share that with you at the end of the video. But before I get to that, I thought there's, a few important things that tips that I can probably share with you guys to help you with using the Neocolor IIs a little bit more successfully. Things that I have found that work and make it easy for me, someone who is not an artist, to work with these beautiful crayons. All right, now I have got the 84 set of Neocolor IIs, which is the largest set. All right, this is a Caran product. Now you don't need to use the Neocolor IIs, you can use any water-soluble crayon. So the first thing and main thing to mention will be that this doesn't work with any crayons. So I know these look like crayons, but they do not. The techniques I'm going to be sharing with you today with the use of water, it only works in crayons that are water soluble. So Caran actually have two Neocolor products. It has the Neocolor I, which is not a water soluble crayon, and we have a Neocolor II, which is water soluble wax pastel. So a lot of people get confused when they think about wax pastel. They think, oh, can I use it with water? It must be water soluble. All right, so Caran has 1 and 2. This one is Neocolor IIs. Now you can use any crayons that you may have that are water soluble. You do not need to get the Caran product. Whatever water soluble crayons you have that work for you, the techniques I show you today will work with them. All right, if you are interested in the Caran product and you haven't tried them out yet, I would always recommend trying out the stock crayons first. That's what I did. I only got like 5 crayons in greens as usual, to try out as stock crayons first to see whether I liked it, whether it worked for me, whether it worked with my style of coloring, whether I knew how to use them, and whether I would be able to use it in coloring books, because it is a professional quality product, and yeah, I found that I could, and that's why I got them. So you could either get stock crayons or you can get a small set before you get started. They do come in, I'm not sure how small a set, but there is a fairly small set that you could always try out first. And even with a small set, you'll be able to mix colors and get lots of colors out of them, and I'll show you that tip in a bit. So you don't necessarily need to get the 84 crayons. This is going to last me the rest of my life. I'm not going to ever need to buy another Caran crayon, Neocolor II, and yeah, I will share it with you with these crayons, all the tips I'm sharing, but remember, you can use any crayons. All right, I actually find these Neocolor II crayons, I'll call them crayons from now on, but I find these crayons a very versatile supply to use. You can use them for backgrounds, you can use them for basing, you can use them for an entire page, you can use them outside your coloring books, obviously, as an art product, creating your own art. You can use them dry, you can use them wet, and yes, I think they are a little bit technique sensitive, so as a beginner you may get frustrated when you first start using them, but once you get a hang of them, you will see how versatile this product is. So I'm quite excited to share this video with you guys today, and yeah, for today I will at the end of the video show you how to use it on a background, but in future videos I will come in and show you how I use them in other areas of my coloring, or how you could use them, you know, on an entire page. But it's a lot to pack into one video, so today I will concentrate on backgrounds because I've had so many requests for that. All right. Now, yeah, I think let's just get started, and I'm going to just start off by sharing with you how I use these crayons, or any tips that I have about using these crayons. Can I zoom in a little bit? Okay, so yeah, I'll just show it to you. Now, I think paper for these water-soluble crayons is important. It's not going to be possible to use these on, say, Amazon quality books because yeah, you need water, and some of the techniques you may need quite a bit of water. So yeah, use it in books with good quality paper. Try them out in your books, try them out on printed out paper, or, you know, cardstock paper you like to do your artwork on, and then obviously see how you feel about them, whether it works or not. So yeah, let's just get to how to use them. So the first thing is, let's take a purple. Okay, the first thing is, yeah, how do you use it? Easiest thing is literally just scribble them on. Just scribble it on and activate it. Now, one thing is, the amount of pressure that you apply does matter. So if you press hard, you'll get more pigment down. If you press lightly, you get less pigment down. All right, and that is quite important, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, the main thing is how to use them. I mean, just literally scribble them down and activate them. So I've got a little bit of water on the side here, and a brush. You can use any paintbrush, I would say, for this technique. I'm using for those of you who have not watched my videos before, I'm just using a water brush, a Pentel one, with a very small tip, but I have cut off the tip so that it's a bit more straight edged, and it's quite a firm brush, I would say. So I like this brush because of that and the fact that I've cut it, but you can use any brush, although the technique I'm going to show you and how to use or activate the Neocolor IIs, I think maybe a slightly firmer brush would be good. I've got a paper towel here, and all we need to do is take a bit of water. I've just dipped it in a bit of water and activate it. So literally just go over it. Now, you will see the difference between the two that we've put down, all right? So that was the one where we've put quite a bit of pigment down. I'm just washing my brush, okay, dabbing it on the towel, and I'm going into the one where we put less pigment down, all right? Now, paper does matter. Smoother paper, you know, more textured paper will have more strokes on it, so it may take a little bit longer to get rid of the, you know, streakiness. But you can see with more pigment, you're going to get more of an intense and bold lay down, or color, you know, color. And if you go for a lighter pressure, you're going to get a lighter lay down. So that's one of the examples of how versatile this product is. You can actually get intense effects or very nice, you know, light, subtle, soft colors. So depending on just how much pressure you put. Now, the more you go over the pigment with your brush, the less streaky it will be, which is why good paper matters, because if you're not on good paper, it will pill the paper when you do that. That's why I said Amazon or copy paper will not be a good idea, because it would just literally pill or even tear the paper. So the more you go over it, the less streaky it will be. And I think a lot of people struggle with getting the streaks away. So that's just something to keep in mind, okay? The more you go over it, the less lines you're going to see. All right, now that's one way of applying it, literally direct to the paper and activate it. Another way of using the pastels would be to use a palette or something that you can scribble on. This is a Caran palette. You have a rough side, as you can hear, and you have a smooth side, which you could use for water-based markers. So I like to use the rough side for my Neocolor IIs, for my watercolor pencils, things like that. So all you have to do is literally apply the color. Let's go for a different color now. Let's go for this one. What is this? Royal blue. And you literally just sort of scribble it on, and you're going to use it as a paint palette. So you're going to just literally paint it on. So you just put a bit of water on it and you can paint it on. Yeah, beautiful, isn't it? Now the paper I'm using, I don't know much about paper because I color in coloring books, and it doesn't matter to me that it's not specific watercolor paper. I just want the products that I'm going to use to work on the paper that I'm using it on. So this paper is Paul Rubens. I think it's 50% hot pressed paper. So for those of you who know about paper, you'll know whether I'm using the wrong paper or the right paper, but it's working pretty well here. All right, so you could see you literally just paint it on like as if it's watercolor paint. The good thing about doing it on a palette is that you can mix colors and make new ones. So I don't know what's a good color to mix with this. Shall we just try? I'm not very good at mixing colors, but let's just try a yellow. A yellow would make it wouldn't a yellow make it green? Let's try. All right, so I've just picked whatever yellow was here. I don't know if it's the right yellow, but we'll try and mix it. And we're just going to pick up and we're going to mix it. Maybe not the right color. Let's see what it made. It's a different color. It's a grayish blue there. Where is my yellows? On the next row. Okay, I should just have them open like this. Yeah, and let's go for a blue. Yeah, let's try it again. But you can see that you can basically mix colors and make new ones on a palette and then use it again to paint with. All right, so there we go. We get a bit of a nice, oh, that's a nice green. Yeah, so you can just mix colors, see what it looks like on your palette. That's a bit more of a yellowy green. Look at that, beautiful. So this is what I meant about getting a small set. You can actually make so many colors with just a few crayons. All right, so you don't need to go and get a massive set. All right. One advantage for us colorists in coloring books about for painting on your Neocolor IIs is it's easier to color over with a pencil because there is not as much pigment laid down. It's less waxy because it's already dissolved on the palette and then you put it on the paper. So it's easier to put pencil over the top. So for basing, it would really help to paint it on. So a good way of using it, all right? Now, there are different ways of obviously blending Neocolor IIs, and one of them is like I just showed you off a palette. So paint on, you know, I mix them on to the palette and then paint it on, or you basically mix it on the paper itself. So if I take, let's take a purple, and I don't know, this might make them brown, but let's try a turquoise. Okay, in a coloring book, I mean on paper, when you're mixing the colors together, it's hard to get the same consistency throughout your page, but you can sort of mix the colors and blend them together on the paper directly. All right, but it'll be tricky for those of us who are not artists, who don't know much about color theory. I think it's always safer to do it on a palette, so you can see what the color is before you actually put it to paper. And yeah, but you can blend on paper itself as well. So either do it on a palette, mix your colors and then put it on, or you can sort of mix your colors on the paper itself. Now, obviously, the next point I wanted to mention is about the thickness of the crayons. They are obviously thick. They're crayons, they're not pencils, and eventually they do get blunt. Now, I don't sharpen them that much, but it's worth having a sharpener that they work with, all right? Now, I have a Faber-Castell one, which I don't use as much now for pencils. I actually kept it for Neocolor IIs. You need one with a, you know, a large hole in it, all right? You can see how dirty that is. But one advantage of doing it in a little sharpener like this, which has a container, is when you sharpen it, obviously the shavings will go into the container, yeah? And you can then actually take out those shavings and put it into paint palettes. I'll try and remember to put a photo on the top here, an empty paint palette. You can save these shavings and then use them like paint. I guess that's maybe another video again where I can show you how to do that. But then I would always clean the inside of this container before you use a different color, all right? So you could do that, or you could literally get other sharpeners, which I don't have at the moment, but you know these silver sharpeners? You can get ones which have a wide hole as well. This one's not a wide hole, but you can get ones with a wide hole. And just sharpen those, and then save the sharpenings if you wanted. These crayons are pricey, and so I would feel very bad, you know, wasting any of the shavings, because I know you can use them like a paint. So it's always worth it if you do find that you're needing to sharpen a lot, and the paper can be peeled back when you're sharpening, all right? So yeah, that's one tip I would have, is to save your sharpened shavings and make a paint palette out of them so you can use them, reuse them, all right? As beginners, I would say it's always easier to start with light layers. Start with light layers. You can always add color on top. So if I take a blue, I'm just going to put down a very light layer, all right? And you'll see that you don't get much pigment out of this. Well, it's not bad. It depends on what you're looking for. But it is fairly diluted, fairly light, yeah? But once it's dried up, if you needed to go over, you can always go over and darken up your paintings. So what I like to do when I'm doing it this way is, well, there's a few methods. One is you can use a crayon back directly. However, I would always recommend waiting for it to dry before you do that, because the crayon to wet paper will feel quite strange. It gets quite sticky or gluey. So I don't usually go direct onto the paper until it has dried, but you can use it direct. A second way of doing it is by scribbling it onto a palette and then just picking up color from there, yeah, like we did. So just pick up the color and paint it on. And you can do this even when it's wet, all right? If you're in good paper. The other option, which I love using, and you guys may have seen in my videos many times in color alongs, is I like to turn my crayon over to the flat side and just pick up my pigment from the back end of the crayon and just paint it on, see? And yeah, that's how I like to add. So you can always start with a light layer and then layer up to get the intensity that you want, so that it's a little bit more forgiving. So for beginners, it's always worth trying out light, and don't go and scribble in really hard, because it may be hard to get rid of the streaks. You know, you may not get the right color you want, and it'll be very hard to then correct things. Okay, so that's one definite tip that I would give to beginners. All right, now when we are coloring, I always recommend that in your highlight areas, you'd leave it without any pigment. So let me just use this dark color, for example. So if I'm coloring, I don't know, shall we just do a leaf or something? Let's do a leaf. I'm not very good at drawing, but let's do a leaf. For any area that's going to be a highlight, I would recommend leaving it without any pigment, all right? So let's say that's where the highlight is, and let's say There, okay? So for highlight areas, leave it without pigment. And when you go in to activate, always activate from your highlight area into your dark area, so you don't pull the color into your lightest areas. So I always tend to just sort of go from the light area into my dark. And you can see that it leaves that highlight area for you. Like I said, it's always easier to add color than to remove. So I always recommend trying to go light in areas that you want to be light, basically. And then you can sort of work a little bit of color into your highlight areas if you need it. But in the first instance, you had no color there, so it wouldn't be a highlight area. So over here, every now and then when you see my hand going out of shot, it's basically just, I keep dabbing. I don't always pick up water. I don't feel like you need that much water, but I just dab to get the color off, especially when I'm going into my highlight area. So I don't bring any dark colors into my highlight area, so I maintain it. I think I've mentioned this in my videos, especially whenever I'm using my Art Dura pencils. I use the same technique, always. Yeah, there we go. So see, we've left a highlight area. Now, if you wanted, say you lost your highlight area, and this might only work on certain paper, but say you left some, you need a bit of highlight to come back. I would take a paintbrush, you could take a paintbrush and actually, with a bit of water on it, and actually just scrub that area. And can you see it's lifting the color there? Dab your paintbrush, not thing. Make sure you don't have color on it, and you can see that you're lifting the color, yeah? So you can always lift a bit of extra color that you've put down by just scrubbing over it, but it won't work again on paper that's not good. So just keep that in mind. A lot of these techniques, you can't just go in and use it on the thinnest paper, because that, what I was just doing there would have just made a hole right through copy paper. All right. So yeah, just make sure. So if you want to bring back highlights areas, you can just by going over it with a clean brush and some water, and you can pick up things. And that's quite a nice technique to know, because you can use it, like I said, for bringing back some highlight areas, or for other techniques like a bouquet background. Now, I have an example to show you for that. It happens to be another Emily Littlehall Olberg's book, Fairy Tales, and it's this page right, if I can find it. Sorry, I should have typed this one right here. All right, let me zoom out a little bit. There we go. So this page here, I used Neocolor IIs for this background, all right? And then I tried to do a bouquet background, meaning I was just lifting out a little bit of color to sort of bring back those circles there. Now this is thick paper, but even then it could still peel the paper, so you have to be careful. But yeah, just to pick up that color. Now, I think it wasn't working perfectly on this paper. It worked a little bit, but it wasn't perfect. And when I took an eraser to my Neocolor IIs, it actually worked as well. So I think if I remember correctly, I also erased a little bit to get those sort of bouquet circles. But yeah, as you can see on good paper, you could do a bouquet effect using this sort of a technique. All right. So that is highlights. I always recommend, even in coloring, I always mention maintain your highlights. And the easiest way when you're using water-based mediums, as I've found when I use my Art Duras, as you guys know, I use Art Duras a lot in my coloring, and I think the easiest way is to make sure you leave a little bit of area without any pigment, and that's the best way to maintain your highlight area. And then yeah, if you need to, you can always bring back highlights by doing what I just did. You can use pencil over the top for us colorists. You could use a a paint pen, a white paint pen, to just put in a bit of highlight. So there are ways of bringing back your highlight, but in the first instance, it's simplest just to try and maintain it from the word go. All right. Now, dark areas, you can always make them darker. And you do that by basically adding more pigment. And like I said, there's different ways of adding more pigment. Either you scribble on. So if it's already dry, you can literally scribble on your crayon. Now, depending on how it blends out, you could even leave the crayon dry. Like I said at the beginning, you can use them wet and dry. But yeah, you could just scribble on some extra color, and that's it. So look how much depth you got to the dark area, right? So one way is by just scribbling it on. The other way is, and I use this the most, is literally just pick up the pigment from the back end. Why do I use the back end? I use the back end because I don't like to ruin the shape of the tip of my crayon if possible, so that I don't have to worry about sharpening it. But yeah, it's entirely your choice. You can always use it off a palette. I feel like I get more pigment from the end rather than from the palette, because when you scribble it onto a palette like I had done here, and you know, use the water to pick it up, you're diluting it on the palette, so I feel like you get less pigment sometimes. But it works as well. Maybe it's better so you don't put too much at the same time. But it's personal preference how you like to use it. I just use it off the crayon, yeah? And then you can blend it out. Now it's water-based medium, so it's not going to stay put, meaning that once it's dried, you can reactivate your crayon. So if we go back to the first one we had done, you know, you can still blend it out more. So keep that in mind as well. When you're coloring or using other water-based mediums on top, they can end up mixing with the base layer that you've applied, okay? So it's not something like Derwent ink tints, which are ink-based, which will stay put once it's dried. Whatever you put on top is going to mix, and you can blend it out more, which in a way is an advantage here, because you want to get rid of the harsh lines. You can still sort of work with it, but yeah, keep that in mind. All right, that it's going to mix with whatever you put on top and reactivate. All right, so yeah, that's how you know, sort of add to the dark layers. Either scribble on, paint back on. Yeah, and one last thing, and I think you've already probably noticed, and I could have put it way up at the top of the list of how to use, is how do you activate it? So let's take a red this time. It's going to stand out a bit. How do you activate it? I literally just take a little bit of water, dab off my paintbrush, and the best way I have found to get rid of streakiness is to basically use a scrubbing motion. So if I just put a bit more here, to use a scrubbing motion when I am activating it. So if I just paint, you know, I'm not actually good at watercolor painting, but when you paint, you're likely to get streaks. It's actually not working too bad, but you can sort of see that it doesn't dissolve completely, and then bits will get dry when you get back to it. And you know, especially if you use more than one color, it's hard to get blend it all really well. So I like to use a scrubbing motion. So I will literally do little circular motions, just like when I'm coloring. I like doing my little circular motions when I'm coloring rather than going back to forth. And I find this the best way of using any of my water-based mediums. I do exactly the same thing with my Albrecht Dürer pencils when I'm using them as well. You know, just a scrubbing sort of circular motion. And that's why a nice rigid brush can also help with this. All right. So yeah, I think that's quite a major thing, and you will see me when I'm doing my background that's what I will be doing, especially when you're doing large areas. The scrubbing motion will help to get a good blend, to get rid of the streaks, and yeah, hopefully you will find it easy if you use the scrubbing motion. Obviously, if you're using it as a base, you will paint on like you do with watercolor paints. And that's another thing I wanted to show you, and how it, you know, this product is so versatile. Other than all of this I've shown you, if you were using it like paint, you can literally do, you know, any kind of painting you want. I'm not, you know, you can use it like a paint palette. I don't know how to paint, but whatever I'm doing right now, but you could basically do whatever techniques you know how to do with watercolor paints. I have no idea how to use watercolor paints, but if you do use watercolor paints, literally you could use this product like a paint, which is why I'm saying it's always good to be able to save the shavings, especially if you do paint and stuff, you know. You can use it to do grass, things like that. If you know how to draw flowers with paint, you can use it for that. So yeah, it's very handy to have a palette with these crayons. All right, guys, hopefully some of these tips have been useful. So I'm not sure what I shared with you guys. I'm just trying to think of how to summarize. So I think we just showed how to apply the crayon. So you could either use it direct to the paper, scribble it on and activate, or you can use it off a palette and paint it on. You can mix colors on the palette. And like I said, it's easier to color when you paint it on with pencils. So if you're going to use it for basing, using a palette will probably be the best. For backgrounds, I tend to just scribble on and activate because the colors will be more intense as well, and it's quicker to get that background done. All right, you can sharpen these crayons and save the sharpening, the shavings for future in a paint palette. And yeah, the main thing is you can work in layers, which is brilliant. So I would always recommend, as a beginner, start with light layers and then add pigment until you're comfortable with this product. So add the pigment, you know, off a palette or directly with the crayon if the paper has dried, or like I said, painting on from the back of your crayon. For highlight areas, always try and maintain it from the word go. So leave an area without pigment to get those lighter areas, and then you can always add pigment if you need to later. And dark areas, you can always add pigment to darken up those areas, even at the end of a page. So yeah, you can always add pigment to darken up your areas. Use a scrubbing motion to get a good result. Look, I can actually show you. So that one didn't dissolve as much, whereas this one has dissolved really well. You see less texture with the scrubbing motion. Okay, so use a scrubbing motion, and always go from your lightest area to your darkest area, so you don't end up pulling too much color into your highlight areas. So maintain those those light areas. And I only showed you with, you know, separate colors because I'm going to show a quite simple background today. But whenever you're using, you know, different colors, and you're going from, you have a dark area or you have layered up lots of colors, you don't want to pull any of those colors that you've probably put just in the dark areas into your light areas, which is why always blend or activate from your light area to your dark. All right, guys, I think that's about it. So hopefully you found these tips useful. Now, I get a lot of comments sometimes that, you know, sometimes the products are a little bit expensive. Yes, this is a professional quality and artist quality product. It is for artists. And a lot of us colorists have adopted using these beautiful products in our coloring books. But is it worth the price? To me, it depends on how often you're going to use them. If you're going to use them a lot, then yes, it is worth the price. These are going to last a lifetime. However, you can get possible budget-friendly options for water-soluble crayons out there. The thing is, I don't have any because I know I have this set, and I would not need to buy any other product now in this range. But there is budget-friendly options out there if you wanted to try out such a medium before you went and got a product like this. I do tend to use them, and I'm glad I do have them. Now, like I said, you do not need the 84 set. If you did want to try these crayons out, you just need to get a few stock crayons to try out, to get the colors that you use the most in your backgrounds. So yeah, you don't need to go and get the entire 84 set like I showed you. You can mix the colors to get different colors, totally different colors, just like paints. So you definitely don't need to be silly like me and get the full set. All right, guys. Especially if you're not going to use it much. Now, I think I would use them. I'd use them for basing. I use them for backgrounds. And I know I've had these for so long now, and I know that I will never need to buy another crayon again. So for me, it was worth it. But everyone is different, and it just depends on how you're going to use them, how often you're going to use them. Are they just going to sit in your collection or not? Obviously, it's for you to decide, but there are other options out there. All right, guys. Yeah, I hope you guys found this video useful, and I think now I'm just going to basically switch to my background in fairy tales and folklore, and hope you guys enjoy watching me do the background. Okay guys, so for this particular page I have decided that I'm going to keep the background quite simple with regards to the colors that I'm using. It's a new book for me. I'm just getting started in it with my first page, and I don't have that much background space, so I want to keep it a little bit simple. There's a lot happening in the foreground, so yeah, I've decided to just use a few colors, blues, and sort of keep it just with blues at the moment. So for this video it will be quite simple, but it will help you put to practice everything that I've sort of shared with you guys, and in the future I will share lots of more videos with you guys. So for example, there is one video that I or one background that I eventually want to be able to share with you guys, but I thought today we'll keep it simple first and then work our way towards it. But this page here I did do with Neocolor IIs, lots of different colors, and yeah, it is something that we will eventually work towards. So I'll have lots of Neocolor II videos in the future, or as part of color alongs, where you will see me use lots of different colors and yeah, give different effects. But for today's background, we're going to keep it simple. I am going to do it with a voiceover so that I'm able to concentrate on what I'm doing, and yeah, you guys will hear the voiceover. So hopefully you guys enjoy it, and wish me luck. I'm so excited about starting in this book, but I'm so nervous about starting in this book, and hopefully the Neocolor IIs work. All right guys, be right back with you. Okay guys, so before I get started on any page, whether I'm using pencils or water mediums, just to be sure, I put some protective pages behind my work. So I would recommend doing this, especially because we're doing a background that goes right to the edges of the page. For those of you who have watched my channel before, you will know that I love to swatch out every medium of mine. This is because our product packaging doesn't always match up with the color of the actual product or medium. So therefore, I like to swatch out so that it's easier to choose my colors for a particular page. Despite swatching out, I will still test my colors on a rough piece of paper to see what they lay down as, and to see how they're going to mix together if I'm using more than one color, because I'm not very good at mixing colors. I'm not an artist, so I don't always know what color is going to mix well with another color, or whether I'm just going to create a muddy brown. So I like to test out my colors to make sure that if I'm going to be combining them or blending them directly to the paper, I know what the color will turn out. For this background, I will try and make sure that I put the colors that I've chosen in the description box below in case you do want to follow along, and hopefully I will be doing this page as a color along, so keep an eye out for that. It might not be for a while, but I will hopefully finish this page as a full color along. Once you're happy with the colors that you've chosen, just get started. Just go for it. I know it's a bit intimidating. It's so intimidating for me to get started in this particular book. But for backgrounds, I will usually go with the crayon direct to the paper, because I don't necessarily need to color over the Neocolor II. So I don't use it as a base. I want it to be pigmented, and I want it to be nice and intense. On this page, I do want to go dark. I have chosen to go for quite a dark background, so the lay down of my pigment will be heavy. However, if you're a beginner and you've not yet got a hang of Neocolor IIs, I would definitely recommend to start light because, as I mentioned, you can always add pigment. It's easier to do that than to remove. And you will see that despite me going quite heavy and layering up quite a lot, I will still go in at the end of the video and add some more pigment to my page to make sure that I'm happy with the laydown, I'm happy with the evenness of the background, or I may darken up the shadows, so you'll see me going back quite a lot. So until you get a hang of these crayons, go in light. But if you're comfortable with the crayons, then in the areas where you want the color to be quite dark, as you will see, around the edges of the paper on this particular page, I will be going quite dark, and then I'll be becoming lighter closer to the center of the page. The reason I do this is to try and draw your eye in to the center of the page where the main element of this particular page is. I want you guys to draw your eyes in or focus in on the lady. In the dark areas, you will see me doing a lot of layering. As you guys know, if you know my style of coloring, even with my pencils, I tend to do a lot of layering. So even when it comes to Neocolor IIs, I do exactly the same. So in the dark areas, you will see me layer up a few different crayons to get the kind of color that I do want. But you will notice that in the highlight areas, which is closer to the center, I will be keeping it quite light. I will go for very light color, so either do not put any pigment like I discussed earlier, or use a very light color in those particular areas, and that will maintain your highlight area. When you come to activating the crayons, make sure you use the scrubbing motion and go from the light areas to the dark areas and just pull the little bit of color that you think you may need into the light areas. I usually just work from light to dark, and then once everything dries, if I'm not happy with the light area and I want to lay down more pigment, I can go in and lay down more pigment later on. As discussed, the scrubbing motion will make sure that the colors blend well, and it will get rid of the streakiness of the crayons, get rid of the lines, the texture. On this particular paper, as the paper was a little bit smoother than the one I had demonstrated my tips on, it doesn't have as much of a streakiness. You will notice that my hand keeps going off screen, and this is because I'm constantly cleaning my brush off on a paper towel or a cloth you can use, and occasionally dipping in a bit of water. I don't use that much water myself. You don't need to, but I do clean my brush a lot on a paper towel because I do not want to bring any of the dark colors into my highlight areas. So that's the reason why my hand will keep disappearing off screen. As I've mentioned previously, with certain mediums, with good quality mediums, you don't usually need that much water. So unlike watercolor paints, which you do need a fair amount of water, with my Arbor pencils, like I've always mentioned, I don't use that much water. And Neocolor IIs as well, they dissolve so well, you don't need so much water. I worked in sections on this particular page just to show you my process. However, you can actually lay down your crayons on your entire background before going in and activating. Once finished activating, I would usually wait for the paper to dry because coloring books are not usually watercolor paper. They're not able to take as much water as watercolor paper would be able to take. So to make sure your paper doesn't pill or tear, even if it's really thick paper like in this particular book, I would recommend waiting for it to dry and then adding any more pigment that you want. And I usually do go in and add more pigment just to even everything out. So either it's to even everything out or to darken up my shadows, I will add pigment. And my favorite method of doing that is directly off the crayon from the back of the crayon, as I have demonstrated previously. So this is exactly what I do for every background that I use Neocolor IIs for. I hope it was easy to follow along. I hope it was interesting and you got some tips that maybe you haven't been using. Let me know in the comment section below how you feel about using Neocolor IIs, and if you've been a bit reluctant, whether this video has helped you break that fear to get going with the Neocolor IIs or any water-soluble crayons. Alright guys, I'm going to leave you to it and I'll be back with you guys again soon. So until the next video, take care, thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.